So yeah, we'll jump straight into it. We'll jump into this Attack on Titan bonus page discussion. Again, I don't know how much it'll go. I feel like I have a lot. I feel like sometimes that I have a lot to say, but maybe I don't. So this was the one. This was actually the panels that really sort of stuck out to me. Because there was a lot of discussion over whether you know, there was some. I saw discussions of like a reset timeline or something, which made no fucking sense. And also just like wondering specifically this King Fritz panel, like what is meant to happen here? Is this what actually happened, and what we saw in 122 was a lie? I don't personally think so. My belief is that music's a little loud. Oh, okay, I'll turn it down. There we go. That's it. Hopefully a little quieter now. Just just let me know. So it's good now. Cool. So my theory on this, it's a pretty simple theory, is that what we're seeing here is kind of Ymir imagining what would have happened had she made a different choice. Like, had she been able to make the choice that Mikasa was eventually able to make, which is pretty cool. I mean, a big thing about Attack on Titan is when people faced with or thinking back about choices they've made. I mean, we see that we see Mikasa have that sort of moment about, had I made a different choice, what would have happened? And it was the whole when Eren gave her the opportunity to confess her feelings, and she didn't go with it then, which is possibly a good thing, because then we'd have seen. Well, I say it's a good thing. Paradis would have been destroyed after Eren died, but Paradis ends up being destroyed anyway. Spoiler alert for like 2 slides from now. It is interesting, to say the least. Like, you know, the idea of choice within Attack on Titan. Yeah, older Ymir is an interesting one. I'm still not. Yeah, that is significant. I'm still not sure I'm smart enough to sort of wrap my head around exactly why it is older Ymir depicted there. I mean, I guess perhaps like she, like with Eren, regressing into that childlike state within, because it's that childish to love Fritz that much. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I guess part of it could be just that regression into the childlike state in order to sort of hide from the realities, because that's kind of what Eren did when he was in Path. The weight of all the memories at once. I'm not overly sure what the growing up motif is in all the talk. Make sure the kiss as a child, remain that way, wanting that love. That's an interesting idea. I guess, I mean, we saw Eren as a kid as well in Paths, and we also learned that in 139 that Eren was basically in a constant state of torment from basically not knowing, like ever since like 122. Eren has basically been in a state where he's constantly experiencing the past, present, and future simultaneously with no idea. His mind is completely his mind is completely ruined at that point after he makes contact and gets the true and unlocks the true founder's power thanks to Ymir. So that childlike state is potentially like a way to protect, like a way to hide from it, a way to sort of escape the reality that his adult self is in. And I wonder if that's what Ymir has been like in Paths for 2,000 years. Escaping that reality. But then again, she didn't exactly have a good life before that either. So, like, there is that degree, I guess there is that degree of childlike innocence, but as a child, she was enslaved. She was taken as the slave for King Fritz. Armin and Eren grow up as their talks go on too. Yeah, that is true. I guess Eren sort of, yeah, I mean, that's presumably on Eren for slowly bringing them out of, or Armin helping bring Eren out of his sort of escapism state as Eren explains everything. Yeah, children can be taken advantage of easier, and Ymir's outgrown that. Yeah, true. It was as a child that Ymir was enslaved, and now as an adult, now that she's been sort of set free of her sort of her burden, that she's able to sort of be an adult again. Again, like these again, I don't know necessarily how these translations are exactly meant to how these are going to look in the final volume. Thanks to the lives you gave birth to, here on I stand. So that one's an interest. That's a bit interesting. Yes. I think also the children thing is that children sometimes see the truth better than adults because they see through the bullshit. I guess maybe. I'm trying to think how that would apply. Fairy tale type thing. Yeah, I know there's the whole thing that not the right. Okay. Yeah, there is definitely. Yeah, I mean the fact that Ymir is now like we're now finally seeing Ymir as she is rather than, I guess, as she was within Paths is interesting. The viewing the world through my eyes all this time. I'm interested to see how that's gonna look in the final one. I mean, I saw one of the early translations was you peeking into my head or something. I think that was on like the one was it whatever it was the One Piece sort of translation site for some reason had the Attack on Titan stuff and they like had used the word peeking into my head, which didn't feel like didn't feel right at all. I kind of like that idea. I've been sort of contemplating a little bit about the Ymir stuff. Like, I know that obviously Eren was able to see Eren saw the future because he saw his dad's memories, and in his dad's memories he was sent memories from the future, from a different Attack Titan in the future, which was Eren. But I guess how much does Ymir know the future? Like, I know that seems crazy, but like, was she setting all this in motion for 2,000 years, or was she actually, as Eren said in 122, just waiting, unable to actually know the true future, waiting waiting, and then when she saw, I don't know, perhaps when she saw Mikasa and Eren, like 2,000 years into the future, when she saw them as when they were born, does that is that potentially when she decided? So it's not like the future's been written for 2,000 years, but the future was only sort of decided, or it wasn't even so much decided. But she perhaps gave I don't know, did she give the Attack Titan these powers in order to potentially enable particular futures to happen? I don't know. That doesn't make sense, actually. It's weird. Just the whole concept of how time, like, the Founder's power can perceive time, like the future, the past, and the present all simultaneously and all in completely different orders. So presumably Ymir had that power as well. But I mean, we don't know specifically what powers Ymir herself has in Paths, like, because obviously those powers are out there being used by the other Titans. I seem to think about looking back after everything. That's an interesting take. I guess, yeah, if everything's happening simultaneously, if you can do that at any point, then yeah. Even if Ymir had the power to see the future, I don't think she'd have the individuality to look into the future before she saw Mikasa kill Eren. That's interesting. Yeah, so what are we saying that? Oh god, time travel. My head is messing up now. Or time travel, the sort of the flow of time. It's weird. It's like, I think what's cool about it is that there's a lot of interpretation. Now I know that Mariana Collins from the Morbid Zoo was quite critical of the final chapter, and I think a lot of her criticisms were pretty fair, because it's made us do a lot more work than any previous Attack on Titan chapter has to understand what's going on. Like, Attack on Titan, its themes and its what it's trying to say are usually pretty clear. There's not a huge amount of ambiguity in a lot of what it's trying to say. At least, I mean, I believe that's the case. Like, I think I always felt it was pretty obvious, who we're meant to root with, what we're meant to, so on, from a mechanics perspective. I think it creates it vague enough. Like, it doesn't try and explain it, which I think is perhaps where a lot of time travel stuff, or the flow of time stuff happens, where it tries to overly explain it, and then that becomes the issue. But yeah, I don't think it's terrible. Like, I do like the idea of, I like the idea of Eren getting all messed up when he's perceiving everything simultaneously, but I think as well, isn't that what Dr. Manhattan had to deal with in Watchmen? He perceived time, like, non-linearly, so, like, just nothing actually mattered to him, because it was just an irrelevant speck in the grand sort of progress that was time. Yeah, there's definitely some interesting stuff. I'm still sort of like I think the time stuff is so important, sort of understanding what character, you know, Erin's stuff is quite important, because I've seen like lots of like a lot of discussions of how Erin's character changed is really cemented in the Dr. Manhattan episode of the Watchmen series. So I haven't actually watched the Watchmen series yet. I've seen the film, which was fine. I've heard it's very bad compared to the graphic novel. I haven't read the graphic novel yet. Yeah, like a lot of Erin's stuff, like in terms of, I think is a lot of that comes down to the interpretation of how much Eren saw once he kissed Astoria's hand. Like, I'm pretty much of the opinion that Eren only saw certain fragments. He only saw the stuff that his dad saw at the time, and it wasn't at that point that he was constantly seeing the future. It was that one instance where he saw everything, and then events would happen throughout the manga that would lead to that. But it was only when it's only fragments, which is why a lot of the time there's that, you know, because people were complaining that it's completely unreasonable if he thought his future was fixed, why he shows such determination for certain things and why his mood would change. But I mean, at the first thing, he's been messed up because he's seen fragments of a future and he doesn't know how to get there. But as the story goes on, he sees more and more of those fragments come true. Like, yeah, the page is literally fragments. But like, I'm sure I've seen some interpretations from people, usually people who hate the final chapter, about how Eren saw everything when he kissed Astoria's hand, which just, you know, isn't true. He saw bits, and I think, like, you know, things that really sort of hit it for him, like obviously when he met Ramsay, that was one of the fragments he saw, and that was a really significant turning point for him. And I think it was just, he became more and more, I suppose, almost like depressed as more and more of those fragments became true. But then when you get to Shiganshina, the Battle of Shiganshina, and he's got like that sort of determination to reach Zeke and make everything happen. I guess at that point he is just driving towards, I mean, plus he wanted the rumbling to happen, like, let's not forget that. Was that scenery confirmed to be Mikasa? Yeah, I feel like Grisha saw a world without I feel the final thing he saw was a world without Titans. I would hope, anyway. But then again, I mean, technically, with the last thing Grisha have seen, I mean, with the last thing Grisha's been able to see, the last thing Eren would be able to send him would be his own death, so maybe, yeah, the last thing he saw was Mikasa killing Eren, but he also saw what Eren did. In chapter 121. Yeah, I genuinely thought we were going to get to see that. I genuinely thought we would get to see the final, any appeals to stop. I don't know. It's interesting. I feel like, I know you've said it as well, Kyle, a full reread is in order. Once volume 34 is released in the UK, I think I'm going to sit down. I'm just going to reread all 34 volumes from start to finish. I'm going to have a look. Wow, we got a lot of mileage. Reread. Yeah, we got a lot of mileage out of this one page. Okay, so we got this little stuff. It's mostly just a little cute thing. The Fate of Mikasa. I don't know why I called it this. It was just some panels that I felt should go in there. Just, you know, it's a big thing that happens. Here comes the bad. Listen, Mikasa and look at Jean from the back. Yeah, I mean, it is Jean. That's, I mean, I guess maybe, like, you know, is that just the face line, or is that like his little beard? Do we know? Jean shit, king shit. Listen, I'm happy enough with that. As much as I was rooting for the Jean Piek storyline. You see how it draws that type of stuff off, so I'm not convinced. Yeah, who knows? I like to think it's Jean. Miller's a loser. Oh, that's not nice. I'm sure the historian Grisha stuff got cut from the final arc. There's the Health Department of Australia. Welcome, by the way. Yeah, I feel like there was going to be more stuff with Historia, but then Yama just didn't really know what to do. And yeah, the Grisha. I feel like it was when Eren said that line to Zeke, when Zeke pulls him out of when Zeke sort of realizes the horror of the fact that Grisha actually wasn't a terrible father with his second attempt, but also like all the stuff that why Grisha did what he did. Eren has that line, "We haven't seen the bit where I eat my old man yet," and I felt like there was going to be something significant there, and I guess there just wasn't, or if there was, it wasn't considered significant enough to include. Honestly, the final chapter could have been like 80 pages long, I feel. There could have been a ton of stuff in there. If anything, just to see more of like the future for the other characters. But that's just because I love, like, you know, I quite like the million endings that, like, say, the Lord of the Rings had, where we got to see every character's sort of future. I dig that kind of stuff. The scenery was that be up in the sky from perspective. From Grish's perspective, it was the destruction of the rumbling claws. At least that'd be what I think. I don't know. Yeah. I guess, like, you know, it's kind of cool. There's a lot of stuff open up to interpretation. Like, it invokes discussion, and that's certainly cool. I know a big part of it, unfortunately, is that Isayama felt he wasn't good enough to convey his own themes at the end, which must be fucking horrible. Horrible situation to be in. Get all that way and realize that you don't think you're good enough to finish your own story. I like both types of endings. For the audience, everything, Lord of the Rings ending, and the ambiguous Eva type ending. He's just being humble. I mean, maybe he's just being humble, for sure. But I feel like there's... Trust him for a second. I feel like there could be some definite truth behind that. Like, he's always struck me as a guy who I mean, like, in a lot of interviews, he's always... Maybe he is, like, just really, really humble. But he has always struck me as a guy who lacks a little bit of confidence. So, yeah. But yeah, we have this. We have, like, we see the extended family. There's Mikasa and old Jean, and I guess that's going to be Mikasa's kid. Or Mikasa's kids, with the grandkids. Always thought that too. Not the most confident, but no, definitely not. He's always come across a bit awkward. It's quite endearing, actually, when you see his interviews. He says, "Oh, it was shit at the beginning," and that was true. Yes, that was very true. Like, I don't know how many people here have read the Attack on Titan Chapter 0, the sort of the sort of the almost like pilot chapter he did to kick off. Sort of that was the thing he pitched with. Because again, that one, the action scenes are great in that, but Jesus Christ, does it look fucking janky in places. We talk about how great the anime is. Yeah, so that was an interesting... I've seen that as well, that he thought that the anime's adaptation of the Uprising arc, or sorry, the Royal Government arc, was better, but that's horseshit. The manga version did it so much better. Like, there's like almost... There are very few things the anime did better. I think, like, the inclusion of having Annie laugh when she's revealed that Isayama asked to get put in, I liked that. That was good. That was a cool moment. That some of the filler they added in, like, season 1 because the manga was still didn't have enough content for them. Some of that was okay. I mean, the too many episodes spent riding in the expedition was probably didn't need to happen. The laugh is Kino. Yeah, the laugh is Kino. It's so good. The Japanese one, I don't think the English laugh is very good. Or maybe it's the other way around. I remember one of them being really awkward. Conversation almost always comes down to what you saw first. Yeah, I'm trying to think what I saw first. I'm genuinely trying to remember. I can't remember if I saw one episode. I have in my head that I saw one episode of the anime and then immediately started reading the manga, or if I just saw a lot of hype online about the manga saying, oh, or like the announcement of the anime and saying, oh, it's based on this really, really good manga, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll give that a go. And then I got the first manga book and was like, holy shit, this is incredible. I'm like, because I read very far ahead. Like, I'd got up to the reveal of Reiner and Bertolt before season 1 had even finished airing. So I was miles ahead of all my friends at the time, which was kind of cool. And then basically, I think I stopped. Like, as I said, I was reading consistently, but I didn't read online. Like, I just bought the books. So when I reached the point where I was waiting for another book to be published, I was like, oh, okay, I'll just wait for another one. But then I went through like I was moving house a lot because of my because I'd like changed jobs and stuff. I couldn't bring all my manga with me just because there wasn't space. Because it turns out that, you know, when you don't have much money, you can only rent really fucking tiny places. Who'd have thought? So I didn't have room for all the manga, so I kind of stopped. And like the last sort of volume I stopped on, well, I was 11 in 2013. Don't do this. Don't do this to me. I was at university when I started reading Attack on Titan. So yeah, possibly. I think I was in like my second year, possibly third year of university when I started reading it. I can't remember. That wasn't 2013, to be fair. That was. Oh wait, no, that was. It would have been 2013. Fuck. Yeah, I started university in 2011. It's not okay. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm gonna die of old age for sure. But yeah, so I think I read up to Armin getting toasted, and then I was waiting. Then the next volume was gonna come out, the fucking basement reveal volume, and then I stopped and was like, oh, I'll pick it up later, and then just never did. Right before the basement reveal of all things, the basement reveal, like Midnight Sun, Armin being picked up at Erwin, all that shit. Like, I think I just assumed Armin was dead, because I'd forgotten about the syringe completely. I think when I read that volume, because obviously I was getting the volumes months apart, and I was reading, like, condensed 4 chapters, and then leaving it for a while. And then I went back and I watched all the anime up to season 3, up to the end of season 3, and after the trailers for season 4 came out. Yeah, after the trailer for season 4 came out, I was sticking with it a little bit. Then I got spoiled that Sasha died, and then I was like, fuck this, I'm reading the manga, and went back to the manga and blitzed through it all. Everyone completely bought that Armin was dead. I can imagine if there's a month gap there. I mean, bear in mind, for me, I thought I had I think I had a 2-year gap between seeing Armin get toasted and finding out that he actually survived, because of how I timed it. I thought the basement was the end of the whole story. Ah, okay. Actually, to be fair, I almost forgot how important the basement was, but I can totally buy that people thinking the basement was the end of the story rather than effectively the beginning of the story. It was great. The basement stuff, the basement reveal, like, just the fact that it's like, oh, there's a lot more to this. That was great. Okay, back to this page. The sort of the putting the final dying rose on it, that's kind of cute. The fact that Mikasa's been drawn a lot here to look quite a bit like Kiyomi. Like, they've really gone with the family resemblance there, just the way her face is shaped and the lines and everything. Even though you can't actually see her eyes or anything, I look at this and immediately my mind jumps to Kiyomi, which I guess is probably the point. That Mikasa's grave? I mean, that's Erin's grave still, isn't it? That's like a continuation of this panel up here. So Jean helps her to the grave, she puts a rose on it, and then later we see that she's passed away still wearing her scarf. Yeah, her surrounded by the flowers is her death, I think. Yeah, sure. Actually, Kiyomi with Mikasa's scarf. Is that even a real panel of dead Mikasa? I think it is. Like, yeah, I mean, it's designed to. I mean, this whole thing is designed to show the passage of time. I've called it the fate of Mikasa because, like, she's featured in all of it, but yeah, and we get more of that, and then we get the bit that really pissed everyone off. The ending of Paradis, the destruction. I think it makes sense. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is so a while back I linked Kyle some stuff, and then he linked it out to his followers, some TikToks regarding, I know TikToks of all things, but it was some discussion of the, like, where people get the thematics of some of the theming of it, like what's the term, the association wrong. They look at it as like Nazi Germany and like Jews and everything for the Eldians and their treatment within Marley. But there was an interesting idea that it was actually depicted more as the Eldians within Marley were meant to be Japanese American citizens in America, in the internment camps in America, because that's the thing, internment rather than concentration, although the American internment camps were pretty close to concentration camps anyway, and that Paradis was like Japan. That okay, everyone be nice. Cheers, Kyle. Cheers for bringing the crowds in. Catch you later. I'll have this up on YouTube at some point. Yeah, so if we look at Japan, if we look at Paradis as like Japan, Japan trying, because that's forgotten its own sort of warlike history, which I guess, Japan for a long time engaged in sort of historical revisionism to hide from the crimes they committed in World War II. And I guess as Isayama's writing this, yep, kiss kiss. As Isayama's writing this, Japan's going through like a period where it's, Shinzo Abe is very keen on rearmament and sort of remilitarization of Japan, and I guess this could potentially be his sort of view that if Japan continues down that path, it could find itself destroyed. So that's an interpretation. But again, like, you know, Paradis was left to the Jaegerists. And, you know, as long as, I suppose, a fascist power is in power, it will inevitably end up destroyed. I think as well, it's possibly also meant to show that the rumbling was pointless, in that destroying 80% of humanity, the cycle still continues. It wasn't the solution. It makes it very clear that, you know, the rumbling would never have been the solution. Man would have still found ways to destroy itself. Even use, you know, violence was not the solution to Paradis' problems. So I think that's an interesting thing. I kind of like that. I kind of like I like seeing the really undercuts the talks for peace that Armin started, in my opinion. So you can argue that, but Armin was only able to, I mean, Armin would have been dead by this point, presumably. Like, Mikasa's, you know, this is like, well, you know, these are characters that were living in, like, the equivalent of 1920. They were teenagers in like the early 1920s. And this is like fucking 2020, you know, 2010, 2020 level technology we're seeing here. Those are like, you know, fucking stealth bombers and all that shit. So, you know, the peace talks would have worked then, but, you know, I think it's more meant to show that inevitably the cycle continues. That's kind of like the sort of almost like the bittersweet, the sadness of it. Like, you know, I don't think Armin would have ever achieved world peace, you know, permanent world peace. That's just like, I think that's just an unfortunately unrealistic expectation. Yeah, it sucks that the peace was temporary. Yeah, it does suck, and that it sucks, but not in like a writing bad thing, and more just oh, that's such a shame. That is a shame sort of thing, that mankind does continue to destroy itself, or mankind doesn't learn. But yeah, but I mean, I kind of like it again because it just shows that the rumbling could not, you know, still, I mean, the rumbling couldn't be justified anyway, not under any circumstances. When was the last time in real life a country was destroyed? Is it really that realistic? I mean, that's a fair point. I mean, maybe it's meant to be like a sort of, almost like a warning again, like a sort of, you know, we haven't necessarily seen a country be destroyed yet, but there's so many tensions that could lead, you know, the world is constantly standing on like the edge, at the brink of like annihilation. I mean, that's what the Cold War was basically about. Doing a couple of panels of Paradis being destroyed will just embolden Jaegerists and thinking that Eren should have just gone 20% further. Yes, but Jaegerists are fascists, and the opinions of fascists do not matter at all. So, you know, we are talking about people whose opinions, you know, actually have a seat at the table of intellectual discussion, not the brain rot that lives in the sewers. Because yes, I'm sure that is the route they will take. But then Paradis would have just inevitably they'd have probably just ended up killing each other, you know. As Paradis would have then just spread out, you know, colonized the world, the destroyed world, and then started, you know, killing each other. Like, it would have just continued, just in a different way. Because that's what inevitably fascist, you know, if fascist powers aren't destroyed, they'll inevitably fall into conflict. You know, as the hierarchy gets weaker with each successive death of its dictator, it will inevitably begin to splinter. So the world would be a better place if 5 people existed. And if Armin and friends are dead, they're meant to be like the Tiber family, their kids going on to keep peace from both sides. I guess maybe that's a way of looking at it. But again, we don't really know what happened afterwards. I think that's kind of the thing. I mean, I suppose we know this happened, but we don't know what necessarily led to this particular scene happening. And I guess that's potentially why it was originally cut from the manga from the magazine. But obviously it's being included in the final volumes here. I personally think it's fine. Like, I think this is meant to be almost like a sort of a grim sort of idea that, you know, if we're looking at it from the point of view that Isayama's using Paradis to comment on Japan, on like present day Japan, and it's sort of rising rising attempt at remilitarization. Perhaps this is just the future he believes Japan might encounter. And again, we don't necessarily know if Paradis is an entirety. This is just Shiganshina being destroyed. What would presumably be the city of Shiganshina. So, you know, I think it's probably safe to say that all of Paradis was destroyed. Bought them like, what, 100 years of peace maybe? After Eren's death? based on the timelines. And that Tiber family is an interesting one. Like, I don't know, the Tibers just helped maintain a lie. The Tibers weren't a great group. They, you know, maintained a lie that kept all other Eldians basically under borderline ethnic cleansing efforts by Marley. Not exactly the best model to follow. But yes, I guess there was that thing where, again, they were maintaining Armin and those people were maintaining the lie of what actually happened. Like, because obviously Armin took credit for killing Eren. To basically, I guess, let Mikasa live out in peace, and then they would shoulder the responsibilities of carrying everything else on. It's an interesting one. I think the end of Paradis, I think it's kind of like, you know, the cyclical nature thing, and it's kind of the kind of grim ending. I think it works. Again, there's a lot of analysis that you can do on these final pages, which is great. It's nice. I like that there's a lot of discussion points and a lot of differing viewpoints. Cycle begins anew. I've seen people calling for sequel off of this. I don't think it's explicitly trying to indicate that. I mean, this has probably happened, you know, God knows how long into the future. At the same time, the gear that the kid's wearing, you know, there's almost like some reminiscence of Survey Corps gear design. Let's see. When it says here is Eren got everything he wanted, his friends lived in peace, and he didn't care about what happened after. Yeah, there is definitely. I mean, Eren is a selfish, pretty horrible character, which is good, which is cool. It's a good design. Like, he's a immature. Basically, he's a monster. He's very immature, but I mean, the reason for that is because he shouldered a lot at age 15. Like, at age 15, he basically saw the future of his own death and the destruction of the world, and felt that he had no choice but to follow through with that, but also kind of wanted to, because he was so obsessed with freedom that he wanted to take away the freedom of anyone who would deny him his. I don't know if I have an issue with that being I mean, I guess that's maybe the thing, that the text isn't critical of Eren. Like, you know, Mikasa's still, oh my god. But I guess that's kind of the differentiation between the interpersonal, like the personal themes, and then the wider themes of the story. Like, I mean, Kyle says I know Kyle's posited that understanding is a big wider theme, and I feel like Attack on Titan maybe isn't trying to position itself with some wider sort of story-wide themes, and it's always been about the more personal, interpersonal, the sort of interpersonal themes of the individual characters rather than a wider one of the story. I guess that's maybe a way of looking at it. Maybe it is just a bit of a dropping of the ball. I think Isayama's made some headway in, like, I guess if you looking at this kind of shows the rumbling wasn't justified because man destroyed itself anyway. But again, like, there's enough criticism of it. There's some criticism of it throughout. It's just that one line by Armin. It's just a bit. If you're either an idiot or want to deliberately misread into it, then that one line can come across as pretty bad. The sort of thank you for becoming a mass murderer. But again, if that ties into like the understanding thing, like, Armin's always been about the interpersonal, the personal side of things rather than the wider viewpoint of things. I mean, there is some wider viewpoints there, but Romelli's favorite line. Yeah, it's not a great line at all. Again, I'm interested to see what the although no, we've seen what the official translation looks like, haven't we? Because of Crunchyroll. When I get to it again in the volume, when I do my reread, when the volume comes out, maybe. So yeah, cycle begins anew. I don't think it's necessarily setting up the sequel bait, but I think it's more just kind of doing like a, you know, we're back to the beginning sort of thing, and like there's that sort of mystery of could it all just happen? Could it all just happen again? I don't think it's a particularly deep sort of final theme. I think it's a nice little nod to the audience, and it's a nice little sort of parting thing for them. Because obviously, like, a lot of time has clearly passed. Possibly enough, like, you know, he's not exactly wearing like the kind of stuff you'd expect to see in like the year, you know, in hundreds of years, although we don't necessarily know what that looks like. So, suggesting that society perhaps has almost regressed as a result of perhaps what was a global catastrophe rather than just a catastrophe on the destruction of Paradis. The intent is good, the wording is just yikes. Yeah, like, again, I think if you understand what's going on, then it's fair enough. But yeah, like, I think there's a lot of people who read that and were like, what the fuck? And I said idiots, but I actually probably wouldn't blame them. My first reading of that, I was a bit like, is this just a bad translation? Which the answer was yes. At the time when I read it, it was a bad translation. Liberio linguistics. It's cool that they get their stuff out quick, but goddamn, they are bad at they are not very good at their job. Because they rush it too much. There have been some janky Eren incel moment in 139 is definitely the worst line. I don't really know what I think about incel Eren. I think the intent here is for the readers to wonder if the next generation is going to repeat the mistakes of the past or reject the power of the Titans and make a better future. That's cool. That's interesting. Yeah, I just like, there's a lot that you can read. You can look into this. Like, I mean, I don't think there'll be a sequel series. I almost hope there won't be. The music stop. Fix that. YouTube doing that amazing thing where it'll just pause a playlist. Go, are you still watching? It's like, yes, I'm still fucking watching. If I wasn't watching, I'd have switched it off. Yeah. No, I like these final two panels. I like that there's, this kid looks a little bit like some of our, a character or two. I feel like there's I don't know if this is meant to be like a deliberate sort of homage to Survey Corps gear, like the sort of straps across his leg and so on. I don't think there's anything specific about that. Shh, I'm not here anymore. Oh, the K-Bird is here, but Inti sent me this. Thought it was interesting. Is this in a DM or is this... Okay, it's a TikTok. We can watch this. Let's put this on. Oh god, it's gonna be a long... Okay. How the fuck does TikTok work? I don't know. I'm gonna have to pause this throughout, aren't I? At the ending stuff, quickly the page. Okay. God, video make a TikTok account. I'm not making a fucking TikTok account, and I know Kyle isn't either. TikTok is the worst part. It is. Like, TikTok is a problem for a lot of things. Like, as far as I'm aware, is this... Yeah, TikTok, you have two choices. Ear-splitting volume or no volume. So that's the first good one. Anyway, Felicity told you all this was the point of AOT. We can't change the reality, but we can find meaning in it. Like 6 weeks ago, lol. These extra chapters only prove my theory right. Parallels support the idea that... Is this going to be a fucking TikTok of an Instagram story? Is this the level that we're at? Is this how Attack on Titan analysis is done? Is this what I need to do in the future? Is this what I needed to do for my Citrus chapter review so it didn't bomb, make it not bomb? I say review. It was a really terrible discussion because it turns out I don't work very well just reading off of PowerPoints. I need chat to bounce ideas back and forth off of. So you're better shot for the next one so I can talk to people. Fucking read the manga and come back and talk to me about it. I want someone to talk to. Reddit failed and didn't turn up. Parallels that support the idea that even though core reality can't be changed, but you can still be happy with it. Oh, is this what? Oh, 6 weeks. Okay, yeah. Ymir and Mikasa both have their loved ones. King Fritz, Ymir, were both able to accept themselves their own person after. King Fritz, Eren, both were hated, but did their best to save the world. King Fritz did not try to save the world. Both are severely misunderstood and shunned by the general public. Both got what they wanted eventually, even though they weren't alive for it. World. Oh wait, is this meant to be Carl Fritz? No, this is the original King Fritz. Am I missing something here? King Fritz was a genocidal tyrant who enslaved people and then raped them. That's not. Yeah, I'm not really buying this. I'm saying that Eren didn't try to save the world. Eren wanted to destroy the world. Eren had no intention of saving the world. Helos, Armin. While King Fritz, Eren were the ones that actually saved the world, Helos, Armin were the ones that received credit and became praised by the world. They were the ones that... I'm not sure about this. Maybe some of the other takes are better, but that's real... No. I didn't read that part. Okay, fair enough. Here we have civilization destroyed. However, the tree allegorical to human connection is intact, even though human nurture will always be plagued due to our inherent desire to be somebody. Our visceral nature and connection will always supersede that. The Titans were never the problem, humans were. Is this going to go into... Okay, we'll see where this goes. Wait until it gets to the part about the pages, okay. Jesus Christ. Make a YouTube video, for fuck's sake, and then... Nah, now details. The boy chooses to go to the tree. Unlike Ymir, who was forced to go to the tree. I'll show you on the next slide. Okay, instead of being chased by dogs, he's accompanied by the dog to the tree. That's kind of cool. I didn't really think about that part. The boy choosing to go to the tree instead of forcing himself to go there shows how most optimal reality is not resisting our fate. In not resisting our fate, we find happiness, and this recontextualizes my former statement of humans being the problem. Even though they are the root of all evil, they are the root of all happiness, literally shown by the tree being born from Eren. Therefore, life is worth living because the connections we make are death will help others in their lives. Eren's corpse formed into a tree, and the boy found freedom in that tree. Whether good or bad things happen, all we have is human connection. If good things happen, we celebrate and laugh together. If bad things happen, we mourn together. And that's why the tree gets bigger regardless of the external world. You could say it's amalgamatic of human life, of all human life ever. What are people saying? I don't agree with this, by the way. Choosing to go into the tree and the dog park. Yeah. So, yeah, the humans are the problem. You always have to be careful with that one, because humans are the problem ends up going very much into the... down the, you know, usually ends up in the same talking point as, like, Earth is overpopulated, which ends up going down, like, eugenicist arguments. It's never great. Never a great thing. So bad focusing on Mikasa and Eren to showcase good human connection. Yeah, there are better human connections throughout than I think Eren and Mikasa. It's so awkward, those two. I'm pretty sure I read somewhere as well that when Isayama, I don't think originally expected Eren to actually be that big a deal, which is weird considering he strikes me as the main character. But I'm sure there was like some interview where I can't remember. I might be misremembering things, but I'm sure there was something where Isayama was talking about how he was surprised at the fan reaction to Eren. Like the positive fan, and this is like not like recently. This is like way back when the series was sort of getting off the ground. I'm sure he said something about that. Ymir parallel to the boy, but here Ymir is resisting her reality shown by. It would have been infinitely better to focus on Gabby and Falco's relationship to showcase the good of humanity. I think, yeah, because we need more Gabby. Like that's an obvious thing. Gabby got unfortunately sidelined in the Rumbling arc, and yes, I'm calling it the Rumbling arc, even though it's technically part of the War for Paradis arc, but. That arc would be twice the length of any other arc, so there's no reason not to have the Rumbling arc as its own arc. If the tree represents human nature, experience, pure consciousness, then our resistance to our reality represents our worldview. This is why here Ymir is forced to go to the tree, and it's seen as a bad thing. But in the previous panel, the boy is willingly going to the tree, accompanied by the dog. Depending on how we view our reality, that is what makes reality good or bad. Ymir's destiny here is only bad because she's resisting her reality. On the other hand, the boy's experience is only good because he isn't resisting her reality. I guess that's his reality. Even though we can't change our objective reality, we can control our subjective experiences, qualia, which give the illusion of different reality. And that's the point of AOT. Happiness was never found outside the walls. Happiness is found internally. It's interesting. Like, I definitely understand these parallels of Ymir being forced in there, and that's what caused the Titans. Like, I'm sure there's... Let's see what this builds to. And everything I said can be traced back to the final panel of the original 139. Mikasa thanks Eren for the scarf, the reason of her slavery, because even though it was bad for her, she accepted that it made her who she was. Once she accepted that, the scarf was no longer metaphorically a leash, but rather it returned to its original essence. Even though Eren has died, he will live through Mikasa and every other person that ever exists and contributes to the living tree of human connection. Notice how it's much smaller here. Only one wing is shown because even though he has passed, he will live through others. This spoils the freedom panel in the sense that he finally reached true heights here, but through true human connection / non-resistance, and not an illusion. Did you trying to say that Ymir should have just let the dog kill her instead of running away? I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it's more just like the... Yeah, I don't think it's going down. I don't think it's meant to be that route. I think it's more just like, you know, the discovery of the tree can be seen is just meant to be seen as a... Pretty much frames this as him being right, which is very cringe. Yeah. Also, the reason for her slavery, that slavery thing, like, that's made. Does this guy need reminding that that's made up? Mikasa wasn't a slave. Like, she felt devoted to him, I guess, but she wasn't necessarily a slave. I mean, I guess, you know, she was potentially kind of partly part of a sort of brainwashed part of a toxic relationship. The scarf being a leash is kind of based. Yeah, I kind of like that line is kind of cool, but at the same time, like the slave thing, Mikasa only begins to believe she's a slave for like a small portion of the book, of the series, which is when Eren tells her, and then she frees herself from her own sort of belief of slavery, of being a slave, but that's not like a thing. Also, that could be a positive thing for humanity, like Grisha delusionally thought they'd once been infused correctly. That's an interesting thing. Yeah, the Titans being used as a positive thing for humanity, but I guess, like, I mean, that's when you can pin it to the problem isn't the Titans, the problem is humanity. I mean, obviously, you know, inheriting the Titans and dying, you know, forcing someone to only live 13 years, and if you refuse to eat someone and pass the power on to them, then it just goes to some baby who'll then only live for 13 years. That's kind of bad. Yeah, Titans can never be good. But the kid can get the Titan power and build roads and shit. Because one person needs to be a slave to make the Titans, that's true. Although, I guess what would happen if Ymir hadn't died after 13 years? What would have happened if Karl Fritz hadn't fed her to her children? I say Karl Fritz, I know he's... What do I know if King Fritz hadn't fed her to her children? Like, yeah, the kid... I mean, if it is a global post-apocalypse, then yeah, perhaps the Titans could be used for good. But again, that kid would be the one building them, unless the kid is just the one using the founder to do everything else. But yeah, it's not literally me. Just to believe otherwise. Oh, okay, let's continue with this thing. Or is this it? All this culminates into this final panel. The tree growing from Eren's corpse leads to the idea that Titan powers will eventually reappear. There will be war, there will be blood, but is it a bad thing? Yes. That's all up to you. You can either be like the boy in this panel, or Ymir. You can choose to resist or choose to accept. Reality is yours. Gorgeous open ending. Like, I agree that as having an open ending is cool. That's always pretty, you know, it's pretty based on, you know, a bittersweet yet open ending is always pretty cool. I'm thinking about Attack. Eren did achieve true freedom, but he will live through every person that contributed to the growing of this tree. The metaphor of human connection in this panel, civilization is no longer in sight, so even though the Titan powers will reappear, it can be understood that humanity will be strong enough to live in the moment and enjoy life for what it is, which will in turn make their reality a happy one. I'm not sure about this one. Plus the curse wouldn't exist. Yeah, so the curse of Ymir was, I mean, we didn't really get the full explanation for that, but it was just she died after 13 years, and that's why that happened. So yeah, I mean, I guess that wouldn't necessarily, but I guess what would happen if the boy got the powers, would he be immortal? Would the power of the Titans make him immortal? I mean, that halogens, that whatever it's called, lives forever. Has been around there for a very long time. It'll be starting again. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I like the idea that it's kind of hinting at, like, the cycle starting again, but potentially could go a different way. There's that bitterness, there's that sort of kind of the horror of the cycle just begins again. But then there's, like, the hope that maybe things could be different this time. Could we learn from the mistakes? 9.9 to 9.25 out of 10. I should have muted that. I really don't like that the language is that. I will, for the YouTube VOD, I might see if I can change some of that. Ugh. Don't need that. Anyway, where were we? Rating something in 9.25 is cringe. It is. Like, if you're gonna rate something in 9.25, you just fucking make it out of 40, for God's sakes. Maybe 9.5 can be acceptable, but again, like, just 0.5s. 0.5s are a cop out in review scores. Like, just put it up to the next level. Like, if you know the numbers aren't big enough to incorporate 9.25 is 10. It's 10. Yeah, Attack on Titan is a 10 for sure. Also, 9.25 to 10. Like, yeah, I don't get it. That's a weird one. 9.25 would be a 9. Miller in with the spicy takes. The incorrect spicy takes. Oops. Okay, so yeah, so that's kind of got it. Cycle begins anew. I feel like there's a lot that can be said. It's a sort of final page that really gives you that room for interpretation, and that's cool. Okay, serious about leaving this time. Well, we're finishing up, I think. I'll put both these up. I feel like the citrus one is pretty cringe. Like, I don't know if anyone was actually here and just sort of being quiet in chat or not, but it was kind of really cringe talking to myself for 20 minutes, because it only took 20 minutes to get through it. I had less slides on here and we took a lot longer because chat is lovely. Other thematic stuff about humanity being good and bad, but I have Hunter x Hunter, which does that a lot better. That's fair enough. I think Attack on Titan, I really like for me, Attack on Titan, like, looking overall, the growth, it just went from strength to strength. And I like that the themes almost evolved throughout it as well. It was all very cool. It was all pretty based. And it's a series I've been following for a long time, so I'm also really biased and don't want to accept something. I mean, I think I said the final chapter was like a 7. I'd maybe up it to an 8 now with these extra pages. It's like, it's not a 10 for sure. The final chapter anyway. But the series overall was a 10. Because I reject like the Game of Thrones comparisons for Attack on Titan. Because even if the final chapter itself was bad, like if we go with the assumption that it was just bad and not as good as the previous like 5 or 6 incredible chapters that led up to it, that also kind of that's one chapter. Final arc was bad. Final arc was great, apart from the last chapter being like a 7 or an 8, and an 8's still good. Game of Thrones had like all of season 8 was bad, with the exception of like bits, one episode and bits of some of the others. All of season 7 was bad. All of season 6 was really forgettable, and there were parts of season 5 that were bad as well. Like Game of Thrones, there was it wasn't like an out of nowhere bad ending. Game of Thrones was bad for a while. Attack on Titan had one maybe not as good chapter at the very end. At least AOT was someone's singular vision, unlike Game of Thrones. Yeah, AOT was written by someone who actually had a vision and knew what he was doing, rather than 2 fucking hacks.